Hello everyone and welcome back. In this video we're going to finally tackle Python comprehensions. I know you thought this would happen about 5 videos ago, but since we're really kind of taking a quick flyover of all the stuff inside the Python language, I figured since we haven't actually written that many for loops together in any sort of projects, and don't worry, those projects are coming in later videos, I just figured we might as well stick to writing basic for loops for a little bit longer for a few more videos just to see them and get used to them before we dive into comprehensions. But really, you should find yourself using comprehensions a lot as you write Python code. And it's a real Pythonic thing to do. So you really show that you'll know your Python skills by using comprehensions in a lot of places. So let's see how we can use them. Well, usually you would have to, if you want to make a list of the values from 0 to 29, you would have to say, well, let me start off with an empty list. And then I would say for num in range 30, I want to my list dot append num, right? And that would then give me a list of the values 0 through 29, and we did it. Now, this is all well and good, and it works, but Python has built in this thing called a list comprehension, which can do all of this in one line of code instead of 3, and once you get used to reading it, you'll almost prefer reading it as a comprehension than you will in these 3 lines. And let's see what that one line will look like. It will look like this. I want num for each num in my range 30, and notice I've put that statement inside of the kind of list braces or brackets, and there we go. I now have my list from 0 to 29, and I got the same answer in one line of code with no indentations or anything else like that. So what's going on here and how does this work? Well, essentially, what we're doing is we're eliminating the need to say, I want my list to have the value num appended to it. So that's kind of step 1 is, hey, I know I'm going to be shoving all this inside of a list, so I don't need to say my list.append. I just need to say, I want that num that I'm getting from this keyword up here that I defined. I want each number from this for loop, all right? Rather than append it, I just need to grab onto it, and I'll store it in this list. Now from there, where does this num go? This num right here that's usually inside the indentation line is actually going in front of the for loop, and there it is right there. So this num in the indentation is now this num out front. So it's saying whatever I would normally do in the indentation line, like append or whatever, put that up here, only I don't need to write append because I'm already inside of a list. And then for the num in range 30, there it is right there. So the indentation line moves in front of the for loop, and there you go. You've got your list comprehension. So super clean one line of code. Now it doesn't stop there. You can do a lot of cool things with list comprehensions, and let's keep on going and see what we can do. So maybe you didn't just want a basic list of the numbers 1 through 29. Maybe you wanted the list of the first 29 or 30, I guess, square numbers. Well, you can do the same thing, right? We could type the same list comprehension, but instead of saying I just want each num, right, like that corresponds to what's going on here. Instead of needing to say I want to append each simple num or value, what we can do is we can instead say I want to square each one of those values. And we talked about squaring before, that you can write the double multiplication sign and then your exponent that you want. And so now I think honestly showing you this example makes it a little bit more clear what's going on with how we reworked the indentation line, because if you wanted to square every value coming out of this for loop, you would have needed to put that square down here, right? You would have needed to say like the square is equal to the num squared, and then we would append, the square. So once again, you can see that we don't need to do all of that logic. We don't need to do those 4 lines of code. We can get away with it right here in one line. I want every value squared for each value inside of this range object. Again, that's how you read it. I want each value squared for each value in this range object. Okay, So what else can we do with list comprehensions? There's so much we can do. So we've realized that we can just grab every basic value and copy it into a list. We've learned that we can do some arithmetic or any other type of function you might want to do. If you've got strings, you could once again title case all of them. So we could go back to, in fact, I think, do I have it? I think I've got it somewhere here. If you wanted to go back to proper casing those names, let's do that real quick from the last video, right? I've got my names here, and if I want the proper case, I could also do this. I could do name.title for name in names, and I could then print out the proper case. Cool. So that's yet again another way of using list comprehensions. You can do it with strings, you can do it with integers, and you can use any type of built-in function you want on that, what would have been in your indentation line for each item inside of what you're iterating through. Okay, anyways, not only can you do logic on this end, in the indentation line, you can also essentially be filtering values as you go. So maybe instead of generating a list of squares, maybe I want to square every even number, but just print out that this value is odd for every odd number. Well, I can do that as well. I can say that I want the num squared if my number modulo 2 is 0, or in other words, if my number is 0, or sorry, even, else maybe I want the string my number is odd for num in range 30. All right, now this one looks a little bit wackier, and whoops, we can now print out my list. And there we go. We get 0, and then we get 1 is odd. We get 2 squared, which is 4, and then we get 3 is odd. We get 4 squared, which is 16, and then 5 is odd. 6 squared is 36, and 7 is odd. So again, what I hope is being driven home here is that what's going on in this line right here is everything in front here is what would be going on your indentation line underneath, right? We would be saying this. We would say for num in range 30, and then we would say something like, print nums, or actually, what would we do? We would say if num mod 2 equals 0, we would then print num squared, and then else print that the num is odd, right? And or maybe we'd be appending those to a list and not simply printing them out. But you can see that this again takes 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 lines of code, and we're getting the same result and storing it in a list as we go. So you can put if-else logic in the front end of your list comprehension as well. And again, anything in front of that for in your list comprehension is essentially what would normally go on in indentation lines. Now you can't get too crazy with this because after all, this does need to fit, and I believe it needs to fit in one line of code to do a proper comprehension. I think you can use some backslashes and get away with that, but you probably don't want to do anything more complex than something than a simple if else, like it's either this or it's that condition, because otherwise things will get a little bit too complex and it won't read as cleanly. So we're kind of on the verge of making too complex of a list comprehension right here. Some might argue maybe you would just want to type it out like this, but hey, I still think we can do it, so we should show you that you can. All right, let's keep on going. We've talked about all the stuff you can do on the front end of the for loop of your list comprehension. You can either just grab the value or do some basic arithmetic or do some if-else logic or control flow as well. But what can you do on the other end? Well, the other end is where you can essentially use a filter function. So notice this on the front here, right, it's almost as though this section is your map section based on what we talked about last time. Now on this side over here, this would be your filter section that we talked about on the other side. This is again why list comprehensions are so popular, is because you almost have a map and a filter built right in rather than needing to write a lambda function at all like we talked about last time. Now there are times and places to do one or the other, and it's kind of up to your place of work or business or projects as to what you think's cleaner, or what the standard should be, but they're all options, and that's what we're here to do, show you the options that you have. Okay, anyways, let's keep on going, and let's see how we can essentially filter objects. So now we could say I want num for num in range 30, but instead now I want to say if my num mod, let's change it up a little bit, mod 5 is equal to 0. All right, so now let's look at what my list is. And my list now is simply all the multiples of 5, right? Because what this is saying is it's filtering out any value, or rather, I guess it's filtering and keeping any value where this condition is true, right? And that's how the kind of filter works here, is you once again need to write a Boolean that'll only be true or false, and you're only capturing the true condition there. So anytime that would be true, that's the value that gets passed in, and if that value were false, then it won't get passed in. Now you can also do a combination of things here. You could say I want my num squared for every num in range 30 if the num mod 5 is equal to 0, and now I have all the square multiples of 5. So you can do a lot with list comprehensions. They're super, super powerful. You can map values, you can filter out values, and you can do them all in one line of code. So hopefully you see the power of list comprehensions, but we're not done yet. I'm not going to copy over a list that I made before. And this is a list of dictionaries. So I kind of have a dictionary that represents maybe a person, right? So, or maybe a user in my social network or something. So every item inside of this user's list is a dictionary, and each dictionary has a first name, a last name, an age, and an ID. Now, what I want to show you here is just a few more things we can do with list comprehensions. Maybe I wanted to get a list of full names, right? So full names, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to pause here for a second, or I want you to pause, and I want you to think, how could I get the first and last name for each person and store them in a full names list? So in other words, at the end, you should use a list comprehension that should spit out a list of 3 items, and those 3 items should be Bob Smith with a space in between, Rachel May with a space in between, and Stephen Martin with a space in between the first and last name. So just 3 full names. That's what your list comprehension should do. Take a minute, pause the video, see how it goes, and let's see the answer. What I would do is I would make probably an F string, and that F string would be, well, what would it be? I'm going to say person, first name. Now, the reason I'm saying person is because I kind of am reading into this and I'm saying, well, it looks like each one of these dictionaries is representative of a person in my network. So I'm making a string and saying I want the person first name. That's how you access something from a dictionary. You give its key to get Bob in this case for the first one. Then I need to put a space, and I'm going to need to make a second set of curly braces, and I'm going to need to then grab the person last name. And then I can do for person in users. All right. And whoops, we messed something up here. What did we mess up? Oh, whoops. My F string has single quotes inside of it because I'm accessing stuff from a dictionary. So I need to wrap that F string all in double quotes so I don't run into that simple issue before. Oh, I also didn't define users. So maybe we would have been good before, but oh well. Let's see full names now. There we go. Bob Smith, Rachel May, and Stephen Martin. Cool. So that's, once again, a pretty powerful way to use list comprehensions. Let's show you one more thing, and let's show you that there are such a thing as dictionary comprehensions as well. So let's say you wanted to map, for instance, the ID of every person to their name and just have that be its own dictionary. So rather than essentially every person being a dictionary inside of a list, what if I just wanted a dictionary of an ID and a full name? How could I do that? Well, I could use a dictionary comprehension. So here we go. I'll call this user dict. And I need to write the essentially dictionary braces here. All right, and so from there, let's now, I guess we'll start with the ID. So we'll say ID, and then we're going to need to put a colon, and then we're going to put, let's see here. I'll copy that same F string from before, actually. And so what I want you to notice what I'm doing here is I'm writing ID, colon, and then, sorry, the value on the other side. And remember that that's how we write values in a dictionary. It's the key and the value separated. So the ID will be the key, and this full name will be the value. And so then what do? I say for, and I'm going to need to provide two values, the ID and the full name. So I guess what I'll do is I'll say for, let's see here, person. Well, wait, can I get away with this? So for person ID, comma, person. Ooh, I'm not sure I can get away with this. Oh, sorry. Here we go. I got it. It's fun to not, do things ahead of time. We learn together. So for person ID, and then my string for person in, and let's see here, users. Let's see if that gives me my desired result. I think it did. Awesome. So now I've got a dictionary where every single user ID unique key is then assigned to the individual user's name. So now essentially, we can figure out who's the first user on my social network, the second, the third, the fourth, and every new user we get would have their own unique ID, and then they would have their first name and last name. And now I can just grab my users based off of their ID rather than their name, right? And you could see a lot of uses for this, like credit card numbers on an account or social security number. You've got some sort of ID value that also corresponds to your name. And now I've got a way to map those together using a dictionary comprehension. So that's super quick and easy to put together. All right, let's do maybe one more dictionary comprehension and show you one more way it can show up. And it'll actually be one of the lead-ins to a video we do in the future. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to write down the alphabet. There's lots of ways you could do this, but I'm literally just going to, whoops, I got to think about it. Q, R, S, T, U, V, V, W, X, Y, and Z. Great. I think I wrote them all down correctly. I got to pause it just to make sure I did. Awesome. So I did write them all down lowercase in correct order, and so I've got the alphabet here. Now, if you were wanting to encode or decode a message, a really popular way to do that is simply by essentially adding some index amount to the letter in the alphabet where it like sits in the index values 0 to 25 or 1 to 26 letters. So you grab the index of each value 0 to 25 and you add a certain amount to it or something like that, or multiply it by some number, and you get a new letter out of this mix. So what if you needed to remember every letter of the alphabet and remember each index that that letter occurred at in lowercase? Well, that would be a great use for a dictionary comprehension as well. And also it'll give us a great chance to look at enumerate. I think we've looked at it before, but let's see it one more time. So what I can do is I could say for I, comma, character in alphabet, not only alphabet, but in enumerate, parentheses, alphabet. And then what we could do is we could print I, comma, character. And so notice that what that's going to do, got to define alphabet. What that's going to do is that's going to not only iterate through every value in the alphabet, but also tell me the index that it was at as it was iterating through. So this, if you look at it, is essentially exactly what I want out of my new dictionary. I want to have every index paired with its lowercase letter so that I can quickly look back and forth and I don't need to memorize that, oh yeah, P is the 15th index. I'll just have it stored in a dictionary somewhere. So again, kind of a simple use case, and we'll actually use this in another video when we build out a message encoder decoder project. But let's make that dictionary comprehension. So I guess we'll call it cipher, right? And we'll say that I want I, comma, char, oops, not comma, colon, char, because we're making a dictionary, for I, comma, char in enumerate alphabet. And now I've got my cipher, and we've essentially got that printout that we had before, but instead of it being a printout, it's now a dictionary object. So I can now know the index and the value. Or maybe even I want this switched around. Maybe I want the character to be the key, and I want I to be the index because that's what I don't remember. Right? So now when I'm looking at my message, what I could do is I could say, let's say I had a message, and that message was maybe I love Python. What I could then do is I could say, and I think I'll need to put this in with no spaces for now, but I could say my message is I love Python, and then I could say for I in, or for character in message. What if I just wanted to know the cipher at the character? And let's print that. And that'll be a good way to end this video, just to show you how this cipher is working. It's essentially giving me a way to decode all of my characters along the way. I now can turn each one of those letters into an index, and we could do a lot of fun things with that later in another video. But the main point here was to see that you can even make dictionaries using dictionary comprehensions. Just notice that you're going to need to have some way to give two values, and we showed you two different ways. Either you're taking that person dictionary and grabbing different things and stitching them together, like the ID, and then creating the full name, or you're actually using some sort of iterator that's spitting out two values at a time. So enumerate spits out the index and the exact thing you were looking at in your iterable, and so then you can make a dictionary out of it. Or you can realize that what you're getting from any item contains more than one value or object, and you can spit those out in, stitch them together in a key value pair in a dictionary on your own afterwards. So lots of different ways to go about it, but hopefully you got a lot out of this video. Comprehensions are super powerful. Of course, with your dictionary comprehensions, you can also do some filtering as well. So you could remove anyone that has, I don't know, an odd ID value, or anyone whose name was longer than 10 characters. You could do that as well in a filter statement to the right of the end of the for loop. And that would again be another powerful way to create dictionaries and simultaneously filter out unneeded values. So I hope you got a lot out of this video, and I'll see you on the next one.